Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. In the webinar today, we will talk about hybrid events and share our experience on producing these. My name is Joakim Jönsson. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at 6Connects, and I've been in the virtual event industry now for more than 20 years. Now, I've been with 6Connects for the last 7 of those years, majority of the time spent managing our EMEA and our APAC business. At 6Connects, we're a global organization with teams covering Asia. In Asia, we have Australia and China and Singapore, India, in Europe, Germany and the UK, and Brazil, and of course US, where we have our head office in the Americas, to mention a few. So we work with a wide range of multinationals, GE Healthcare, Unilever, BlackRock, Salesforce, but also governmental department, associations, and many event organizers. But despite all those years in the event industry, I don't think anything could have prepared me for the way things turned last year. Now, we're here today to talk about where the pendulum will swing next, and specifically where we think it will go when it comes to hybrid. And I'm joined here today with Sabine Adam, partner and director of business development at Congress. Sabine and I, we work close together this year here, and it's with that background that I want Sabine here together with me with this webinar. So we will talk later about what's the importance of combining technology and how that can work together with other event elements. But Congress had done a really great job at this. So Sabine, thank you very much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Joakim. It's a great pleasure to be here and to share our experiences and our thoughts. I think it's very important. And as you said, we were not prepared what happened in 2020. It was really, insane. And nobody could have expected that. And Congress, as an event organizer, I just want to introduce ourselves briefly, especially focusing on helping associations with their conference needs. As a professional conference organizer with experience going back from 1982, when the company was founded in Switzerland, Congress is a trusted partner on many medical associations and has organized large conferences with 10,000s of attendees. So myself, I'm already in the business since 30 years, so I have very extended knowledge. So I think we can contribute a lot, both of us, with this 50 years experience we have. So let's just step in and do it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sabine. Now, we have a little bit of housekeeping. So we want this to be a conversation. We want to, Sabine and I will talk, but we also want to hear from you. So if you can submit your questions in the box below the video, you see that, and you can submit questions at any point during this time. So please go ahead and do that. We want it to be interactive. So I'm going to send out a few polls, and I will ask you to use your mobile phone, and you will be able to participate and interact with us. We want you to hear from you. So towards the end, we will send a feedback survey, and if you fill that out, you have the opportunity to win a presenter kit, so with lights, and make sure that next time you're on camera, we elevate sort of your virtual presence. Finally, we want to continue the conversation. So we will share instructions with you how we can do that. For example, in LinkedIn, we will use the hashtag 6CHybrid. Those of you contributing, you're also in the running for a few vouchers for a coffee shop near you. So please join in the conversation. We will also record this webinar, so you will be able to share it with someone that maybe missed it here at the live event, and that will also come instructions of how you can do that. Now, today we're going to go through a few different things here. So here's a quick agenda. We're going to talk about what are hybrid events and what does hybrid mean from an event organizer's point of view, why you should be looking at hybrid, and what can be the impact on that on your event strategy. also thinking about what are the things to consider when you look at hybrid event, and finishing off with the benefits of hybrid events versus physical events, and then we go to questions. So that's sort of the marching order, the running order here today. I don't think, before we jump in, I don't think I have to go into great details on why hybrid is a very hot topic at the moment. Some of the data points that you see here, they all show in the same direction. And we've been out talking to our clients, and there's some common theme that we see here. We see that in terms of you're looking for exiting COVID, finding new ways of how to combine physical and virtual events and do that into one format. Want to take, we're being asked by our clients, so how can we take advantage of using multiple different technologies and innovate the event format? So innovation is a part that comes up a lot. And then it's sort of looking at, if we introduce the right technology and do this in the right way, can this change the value of the event? There can be value before the event, during the event, and after the event, if we implement technology the right way. And then, of course, we want to understand and evaluate the event, the different elements, ability to compare apples with apples. So with those sort of data points, with those themes that we have seen when we've gone out to talk to our clients, let's jump in here, Sabine. And so hybrid, is that a new event format? And why do we hear hybrid mentioned a lot?
Well, Joakim, it is not new. I mean, it is known over the last 10 years at least. But in the light of COVID-19, everybody is now talking about hybrid, but nobody really knows how to handle it and how to perform it. People wish to be back to normal. Well, that's okay, yeah. However, everybody knows there will be a new normal. And I think that's the same way what you're thinking, Joakim.
Yeah, I think that sort of there's an element of people being uncertain of what it is that will come, and we also wanting to do something new. And I remember talking about sort of, is it something new? I remember doing a hybrid event. This must have been 2008 or 2009. We did a hybrid event for London, with hubs in London, in New York, New Jersey. A couple of people virtual speakers, and so this is not new per se. I think people's expectations on hybrid, that's maybe where it's where things are new. So don't be afraid of hybrid. We've done this for a long time. I think we'll talk later about the swing of the pendulum. I think 2020, the pendulum, if anything, swung away from hybrid, and everything was just virtual, right? So with that, what is it then that hybrid mean, Sabine? What do you put into that?
Yeah, well, what does hybrid mean? That's always the good questions, because there are different opinions. I mean, is it the format digital and physical audience, and the speakers are physically on site? Is it a studio with speakers broadcasting to a virtual audience? Or maybe a physical meeting having virtual speakers broadcasted in? And how do the physical and digital participants interact? Or is it even a conference which is broadcasted via different hubs, as you just mentioned? I mean, there are so many ways to perform this. And here, the question, as we will not be able to copy paste what we have done so far. Live to virtual didn't work. I mean, we have to rethink the ways we are going to move on. And it's also not possible to just move on to virtual, to hybrid again. So I think, thank you for putting up the slide, Joakim. When you look at the slide, you can see it. I mean, what we had in the past, like in the traditional way, was the physical meeting. We had an audience. There was a information flow going from the speaker to the audience. That's it. There was not the interaction was not much usually in a traditional conference that there was an interaction between the audience and the speaker, only with the questions. But I think what you can see in the lower part is that's the future. The most successful hybrid meetings are those that can blur the lines between the digital and physical engagement. And I think that's really the point what you have to think about, because it's not only now digital and physical, you have everything digital and physical. You have an audience, you have a speaker, and it also opens you up a whole amount of opportunities. So I think that's something you have to keep in mind. And then to interact these two audiences and speakers and everything to get it in one piece, that's an art, I think.
Absolutely, and I talked about the pendulum and the pendulum shift, and I've seen that as a sort of we used to have just physical events, and then it swung to last year to be only virtual event. But I think what we're all convinced of is that sort of the right way forward is a mixed in between. So that's the hybrid is forever. That is where we will end up. Now, before we go any further here, I want to just take a second and see if I can ask you to get your mobile phone ready. Pull up the camera and in here, just point that towards that QR code. So once you've done that, it will then take you to a quick poll. Now, what we're doing here, we're just doing we're doing a hybrid event, right? So we're talking on a platform, Sabine and I, and all of a sudden we're bringing in a new platform. So this is a great way of saying that you could have physical audience, you could have virtual audience, using QR codes. They can communicate and connect on a third medium, the mobile, right? So that's just one format, and it was just a very quick question on the survey there. So the importance there was really just to show so that we can in an event really jump between format, between channels, to be able to create a really engaging event. So with that said, Sabine, why are our event organizers considered hybrid events now?
Yeah, well, we as conference organizers actually believe in face-to-face meetings, of course, because that's our core business. But we have collected, as you showed in the beginning, a lot of data over the last year, which shows very clearly that the demand of hybrid is very high, meaning a mix of live and digital. In several surveys we saw, I mean, you even stated 95% in the medical world, because I'm working mainly in the medical world, it's around 60% of the participants are stating that they want to have a hybrid meeting. And especially in surveys we got from parents and from countries with travel restrictions, people who are limited in time, they really appreciated the digital format because it opened up to them the opportunity to learn something and to go online. And it's something we have to really consider in the future, because this part will remain, and it gives us another opportunity to have a higher reach out. And we have to really see we have two different kind of participants. There is one part which is just simply wanting to learn something, collecting CME credits or whatever they have to have, and on the other hand there is the other type which really wants to interact with the others, to have the network, to discuss. So we also have to think about changing the format of the live conference at the end. And it's because we have learned now that content can be consumed online very easy, but we cannot replicate discussions and networking. So I guess it's maybe in my world a little bit different than in yours, Joakim. Maybe you have examples of other industries.
Yeah, so as I said, we work across a lot of industries, and if I should point out one, I would say sort of technology, the technology industry, where we see companies like Spotify and Facebook and Twitter and many more are sort of preparing for their workforce to work remotely for the foreseeable future. And where you used to sort of have big clusters of employees in certain city centers, now that will change, and you might be able to catch some people there at some point, at some of the time, but I think you will really need to cater for this new world where everyone will not sort of live and work just in the city center. So with that, that is also a catalyst for why people are then looking for a mixed format or hybrid format. I actually see we have already got a question coming in, so thank you very much for sending that through. That's what we asked for. And the question is here, do you see the move to hybrid only in Europe or the US, or do you also have some examples from elsewhere in the world? So I can take that first here. It's not only in Europe and in US, and I was on a couple of weeks ago with a client out in Asia Pacific. They used to do a physical event prior to COVID, covering more than 10 regional meetings to cover the key markets in Asia Pacific. And then last year, COVID, no regional meetings, so we did a virtual event. Now, the virtual event, there we managed to increase the footprint for about 20%. So quite significant jump in the number of attendees that they were touching. But when we now talk to them about sort of what will it be like coming out of COVID when things start to open up, they're saying they're not going to go back to running 10 plus regional event. Maybe they're going to create a couple of hubs, 2 or 3 hubs in some key markets, and then adding on together with the virtual component of that one single event. Now they're then talking about doubling their audience from what they used to do when they had 10, 15 regional hubs. And I think that in a market, I used to live out in Singapore, and I know sort of how dispersed that region is and how tough it is to cover a large geographical area like that. So it's not something that we just see in Europe or US. It's very much of a global interest. But there are also some dangers, or at least some worries about the hybrid, and I often am asked to comment on sort of will it cannibalize the physical event? I don't know. Sabine, do you have a view here? What do you hear this as well?
I assume the world will learn to live with a combination, especially in an international environment. National conferences, I believe, will maybe remain physical because there's also a language restriction, and whilst others will learn to see the advantages of the outreach. And I guess also sustainability will play a major role in future. The consciousness of the environment will have a major impact. New generations, I can see it with my kids coming in, already experiencing now that we must be kind with our environment rather than destroying it. And they will see the advantage of hybrid models, and as it allows them to choose which one they think is worth visiting and traveling, and which one is enough to just listen, because you just need to gain the knowledge and gives them the advantage. Students of the current generation already learned now to get the information digitally. I can see it with my daughter. She's studying medicine, and she is getting that in. She has to study since 1 year online, and she sees a lot of advantages. Of course, the practical part, and that's again, we are hybrid. The practical part you cannot replace. So I think, but that generation is used to that already, and it was there before, as we mentioned, because even when she was in school in a boarding in India, she was able to get a German lesson, and she was able to complete an IB in German, although she only had a teacher on Skype, and that was already like 4 years ago or 5 years ago. It's really interesting, and I think that's that factor which is which is a real advantage for the future. It opens also access to speakers which would typically not be able to get to your conference because they would not fly for 30 minutes talk. And it doesn't make sense to fly in people but now you can beam them in and without traveling. And there's a chance, and maybe the technology is evolving. We already have the hologram stuff if you have enough money, of course, but it's something, it's going to be very fluent in the future. Do you agree to that, Joakim?
Yeah, I think it's a more inclusive format. I definitely agree with that. I think the risk of cannibalization, it's not from making your event more inclusive or making it more having a virtual component. I think the cannibalization is I signed up for an event, but someone told me that I have to be in the office that day, and so I couldn't travel to that event. So that type of or I need to join a call, so I can't go to a conference for full time. So then I might, maybe if it was physical, I would say, well, actually I won't go. So I think the cannibalization is not coming from a virtual component, that's coming from other factors. But now with an inclusive format, with a hybrid format, you can then bring those people in, maybe not for the whole conference, but at least for part of it. So I think not so much cannibalization, more sort of around the opportunity to open it up. But talking then about the impact. So what would be the impact for event organizers when they start to include hybrid event formats in their event plans?
Yeah, well, it gives a very high chance to associations and organizations to have a higher impact, to have a higher reach out in future, because there are no more obstacles with boundaries. However, I mean, we have to really see that there are organizers need to consider the higher costs versus the benefits, such as because we should not just move now. Everybody is hybrid. I don't think this is the right way to go. You really need to do an evaluation of the different types of meetings and look also into the costs and actually do that. And then once you have done that, then you can go and say, yes, I'm doing this. And there will be, of course, ones which is a very high benefit for them to go hybrid, but others maybe not. And if your assessment showed that it is the right way for you to go, then you go. And I think there are pros and cons. And in the medical world, it clearly showed a little bit the trend to go back to face-to-face, because also we have to look into the sponsors, supporters of our meeting. What do they want? How can we embrace them and include them and give them opportunities also in the hybrid formats? We should not leave them out. But I think, in my opinion, we should also mainly focus also on the participants, because if the participant is happy, our sponsors will be happy as well. And I think there are such a lot of opportunities. And everybody talks about Zoom fatigue and no visitors at digital booths, but it's also the way we behave which is changing, like the way we do the meeting and the way we design the meeting. But maybe, Joakim, you want to elaborate a little bit on that more?
Yeah, I think sort of there's definitely sort of bracing for impact for event organizers. And I will highlight the many different ways that this will impact, of course. I will pick a few. So, but one thing that I think we saw last when we sort of a lot of event organizers was twisted behind their back to do a virtual event. The feedback that we got coming from our end was that of course sort of the virtual is not the same as physical, and we need to, I think that was never debated, but it was also a lot better than maybe people feared. So I think that's an impact that is something to be aware of. But one of the biggest impact that to think about is sort of, what will it mean if anyone can come in from anywhere in the world at any time at a different cost structure? So, for example, previously maybe you could send one person from your team to the conference. Well, now you just, because you had to pay airfares or travel arrangement and hotels and etc. Now maybe you can divert some of that travel cost to sending 2 or 3 people to the conference. You're still paying for the conference, but you don't have to pay for, there's no time out of the office. So all these elements. So think about how it can straddle geographical, economical, and sort of the time barrier that people can actually go into the event after the event has happened, so to say. So that thinking of in some respect, and I think we've spoken about this many times, Sabine, on sort of, is it time to swap from an event view to sort of more continuous communication? But I see we have a question coming in here, so I will jump to that. The question is how should networking work between an in-person and an online audience? So I think we're sort of in that space. We're now making sure that we are ready from a technology point of view to do that. So that is making more mobile-friendly interfaces. So yeah, and I have a slide that I can pull up here that sort of shows the vision, or what I see the future here. So you see physical audience meeting virtual audience, and they can network together. You have virtual exhibitors meeting physical audience, and so forth, vertical and virtual and physical speakers. But in terms of the networking side specifically, that would be the ability then to have a physical person meeting someone that's virtual. And we are bringing out some really clever AI tools where and I will come a little bit later onto that, but where you can actually make sure that networking is not just a matter of who you stand next to in the coffee queue, but can be really sort of a focused activity. So networking, for sure, an area that we're investing in, making sure that our technology can respond to that. But jumping back here to our conversation, Sabine, what are things to consider when you're planning a hybrid event? What should we what should you think about?
Yeah, I think you have to keep an eye on your budget as well. I guess, I mean, also a lot of people in our audience, not everybody has a huge budget to spend, and out of experience planning currently hybrid conferences, and I can see there was also a question in the chat. Could you elaborate on a concrete example how to do a hybrid conference? Then I can already state there is a minimum of 30 to 40% increase in the technical equipment, because you need to broadcast. And if a conference does not have that budget, you need to consider to change your format, because it's not only that you say, oh no, it's too expensive now, but you could think of having less parallel sessions, but having very streamlined sessions which you can broadcast, and thinking of getting the participants prepared ahead of time using, for example, a platform, putting in already the classical talks so that they can prepare themselves, listen to the content, and then use the conference as a networking and discussion platform that they can physically then meet. And here you could also integrate then the digital audience if you do it right. So it might be a mutual benefit for all to prepare themselves before the conference, watching the frontal teaching ahead of time, and are ready for on-site discussions and networking with in-depth learning, because then you repeat. And that's something, because usually when you go to a physical conference, you listen, you indulge the stuff, and then if I ask you two weeks later, you won't remember the content. And this will move the conferences in another direction and will give the digital part a completely different impact. Additionally, the integration of digital participants on site is really an added value. And they are the touch points what we can use. And the platforms can be used, in my opinion, the year around, and contents can be delivered right on publication without waiting for a conference. But on-site discussions about how and why and what can be very intense, much more intense. And I think that makes it also much more beneficial to travel to a conference.
Yeah, you're hitting another big the time perspective, the sustainability perspective, element of cost. So the cost, maybe some of the cost goes up, but then on the other hand, the costs for delicate, in terms of hotel, in terms of travel, and also maybe venues. If you used to do 10 millions, maybe you only do 2 venues. So there's a lot of things to balance. But I think when we look at hybrid, you have to think about it as a new format. It's not just running a physical conference and a virtual conference and trying to run those in parallel, but you really have to look at it as one conference. Now, what that one conference will look like, I think that will change. So I'm using the puzzle here. Different pieces of the puzzle needs to fit together. And for each and every conference that we do, the puzzle might look slightly different. But if I just want to sort of pick one of them, it's sort of the top left corner. We talked about venues and interfaces, and I hear a lot about thinking about how can we run a multi-hub rather than a large physical conference. So those are things that I think you need to consider when you're looking at this new format. You need to look at all these different elements, think about it as a more fluid format, and back to sort of that pendulum that I talked about before, where we will end up somewhere in the middle, however, sometimes more towards physical, sometimes more towards virtual. So I think that's really sort of where we see the using all these different pieces of the puzzle to put together a new format. But Sabine, how can we engage in both physical and virtual attendees? I think you gave me a slide here to show. I will see if I can bring that up. You had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that shows, I really like that slide because it shows very clearly when is our brain active and when it is passive. And when you look at the pyramids, you can see really clearly there is a lecture and it's reading, audiovisual. You are in a passive way. Even with a demonstration, you are on the passive side. Only when you start to discuss, when you do practice, when you teach others, then your brain goes active. And when your brain is active, you remember. So I think I believe if we find the right session format, it will be for all beneficial. Look at the schools we are teaching in the same way as 100 years ago. And I think I really have to say it's so devastating to see what's happening in COVID with all these young people. Because the teachers are just not capable, or only very few, to adapt to that, because they are doing it the same way they have done it for 100 years and they have not adapted, and they just I think that's the wrong way to teach our children. Now we see this huge failure using new technologies. We need Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought it was someone. We need to adapt to the new demands, which will face, and the schools have to be really good. I'm sorry. I really get an echo now. It's really distracting. Sorry. But I think many things have been suggested in the past to the people, and they have not been accepted. So we can now take COVID as a chance for us to start and change and bridge the generations. Also, it is not proven that the new generation is more innovative versus the old generation, but we can match them together in new ways to engage participants, regardless if they're on-site or digital. And we need to change ourselves and the way we transmit knowledge. Without this, we can have as many technologies as we want. We will fail if we don't change our format. And I think that's the key message also to how to blend really practically a hybrid session. We have to change our behavior. Otherwise, it will not be beneficial for us. We have to change our way we are presenting. If we do that, combined with a great technology, then we will be successful. If we do only one thing or the other thing, it will not work out.
Yeah, and I think we have to sort of design that experience, right, to make sure it's engaging, and that all goes to sort of thinking that it's one shared space. Earlier here, when we used the mobile phone to, it could have been physical attendees, it could have been virtual attendees. Everyone, people sitting in a hub, they could still have engaged with that poll. So thinking about different ways to do that, and I'm going to go back to my sort of my vision, my view here of sort of this is what I think this is for me a very inspirational image where we see sort of, but we need to bring in the right tools to make this happen. So part of it can, for example, be to how can we allow physical attendees to schedule meetings with the virtual attendees, but not maybe right when they're there, but before. So using technology to add value before your conference. So I already come into a conference knowing I'm going to meet this person at this time, and the technology that using video chat, using meeting scheduling, using artificial intelligence to see who can I matchmake with, and I think that will really allow us to bring a completely different value to the event and make that whole event engaging. But let's go to the last section here. So what are some of the benefits that we can look forward to when we're moving to hybrid instead of physical events? Sabine, I don't know, do you want to start there?
Yeah, as I said before, hybrid meetings will ensure much higher impact in reach out. But on the other hand, costs are higher. Unless the organizer starts thinking of different formats, they will not be successful. If you have to consider what to do, you will have to change, because the whole scenery will change within the next 2 to 5 years. So I think you have to ask yourself these questions. What if a Congress becomes a Congress campus throughout the year? What if the AI can gather information that participants are truly interested in? I mean, that's something which is really something beneficial. And what if a platform can bring people together when the data is ready for publication, making it more timely and moving forward? It's especially here in the medical education, because I think it's beneficial for the patients. It's in that case, if you transfer to the medical world, and it is beneficial. It is really beneficial for the HCP, because they don't have to wait. So it's really something which is really key. And because usually what happens, when I bring it back to the HCP, and thank you for putting up the slide, we have unsorted amounts of informations. HCPs are often overwhelmed by the extent of data, and I guess also other clients in other businesses. Congresses can be also a lonely place, as you mentioned before, Joakim, because it's not. I mean, you can randomly meet someone at the coffee break, maybe, but it's maybe not the right person, or maybe you wasted your time with the person you don't want to meet. But there we can really help. It's either physical, digital, or in the combination, and find the right session of interest is not always easy with the amount of parallel streams we currently are having. So this could also be a big help to go on. So these are just examples, and we could talk about this for days and still haven't found the right solution. Again, I mean, here talking about it and implementing it are two different things, and we need to be practical and see what we can do, and we have to go in steps and choose the right technology. And I mean, the technology will evolve, and there will be many more stuff coming out, also for the physical part, for the platform part, and even young people need to be open and watch out, because I figured out that it's not only the young people who are very progressed. It's very often also. I'm quite a Methuselah, but I love new technology, so that really helps. I mean, it's a mindset, I think. Joakim, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's a wide range of benefits that we can speak to when we start to speak about hybrid. I've mentioned a few already. You used to be sending one person, you can send 5. someone that missed a conference can take part afterwards, so you're extending the time horizon that your conference is giving value. The personalized engagement tools that we've already touched on, I think those are really key. I'm someone who, in certain settings, I can be very extrovert. In other settings, I'm more introvert. And in a forced networking setting, I'm not always the best. But giving the right tool, if I knew that I'm not sort of just speaking to someone just because I stand next to them in the coffee queue, but actually someone that I'd looked up beforehand, found matching interest, and all of a sudden. So the right tools here, working with the right platforms that can do those things, I think that is a really key element to bring more benefits to the hybrid conference. And I'm going to go back to my vision again, my mood slide, and another example, speaker recruitment. So and we were working with one of the large global tech companies, and we did an event in India for them. And normally they would not be able to fly out sort of really top talent for just to talk for 1 hour. But the hybrid format, that really meant that they could still go ahead and get people at a new level of quality that they previously never could have. So I'm going to share this image with you later, but it just, for me, talks so much about the different benefits that we can see if we're doing hybrid the right way. But there's some let's see, there's some questions are coming in, so let's jump into questions. There's already a lot of questions, so if we won't get to your questions, we'll make sure to come back to you afterwards. But let's jump in here. Sabine, we talked about this earlier, but maybe touch about it again. Is hybrid something new, Kevin? So yeah.
No, it's not. I can clearly say it's not something new, as you mentioned before.
Very efficient answer. So I will. There was a question you mentioned sort of as well. Can we talk for a clear example of a hybrid event? I'm thinking about sort of sales kickoff. So you used to have a sales kickoff where you flew the whole sales force in January to somewhere and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars running a sales kickoff for them. Now, do that instead with a couple of hubs and virtual virtual attendees as well. Run it not over 2 or 3 block days. Run it maybe over 2 weeks. You do a couple of half days, and the impact is not that you have to stop the whole office, everything for sort of a week. So and what happens to the salesperson that starts a week after the SKO? They now have 51 weeks to wait. So that the ability to extend the time, that I think that's a really strong one here. I don't know if you have any other examples that you would like to bring out as well.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think the question from the audience is really, they want to hear something concrete. And I mean, we are planning a couple of conferences, like in the second half of this year, even the first one in July, going hybrid. And it's really, at the moment, it's even more tricky because you don't know if you can actually do it. So you have to foresee a lot of things, what is going to happen if you have to go back to the fully digital. So you have to plan in also with your sponsors, with everything that you're secured, that you don't end up at the same situation as you had ended up in 2020 when you planned a physical meeting and then suddenly you have to go digital. So you have to now already secure and inform all your supporters, all your participants. It could be the case that it goes back to a digital format. So already plan, like you have to do the planning very clearly, but and think about it. And again, coming back to this, changing the way you are presenting yourself, the way you are doing the sessions, go away from the frontal teaching, implementing more panel discussions, implementing controversies discussions, getting in speakers which maybe not be able to travel, but then just don't put them on the screen and there's nobody on stage. I mean, that's also very odd. So you have to also think about this. And it could also suddenly happen. So you have to always have a different setup on the stage. So this is a very practical thing. You have to think about it. You have to set up. And if you have many parallel sessions, because, for example, medical conferences very often have medical. So, I mean, plan maybe only for 2 really good one studio type rooms and then broadcast them in a really exciting way rather than broadcasting 13, which is very boring, or have this as a highlight and the others they are running as well and can be then also available on demand, or even which people are very reluctant at the moment, actually record them and put them just on the platform on demand. When people ever want to digest them, they can do that. The on-site people will definitely go into the session, but digital audiences, they want to listen whenever they have time, and then not at the specific time. They only come to your environment when you have something to show off. And I think that's really the point. When you plan it that way. And of course, you have to also then plan all your security stuff, all your whatever hygiene rules, what you have now, which is coming together. How do you let them interact? Do you have coffee, like we are thinking of coffee corners where you can actually connect the 2 audiences, the digital, they can talk to each other. So it's not easy, and it's also for us an adventure.
I mean, I like that. I like the idea of that hybrid isn't a good adventure. Maybe that's our new tagline. Come and join us on the hybrid adventure. So I have a few more questions here. So how does Six Connect see using more AI in the future to achieve what you want from a hybrid event? I think I'm going to make a plug here. We did an event where we talked to a lot of our clients last week here on sort of what is our roadmap looking, and AI is a big part that we're bringing out. So matchmaking, I've already talked about that. The ability for me to not just to be able to see, I want to see this person with this profile, but also looking at how are they interacting. So the profile is being made up, what you say when you register, made up of what areas do you visit, and what content are you looking at, and how you respond when we're doing surveys, etc. So all that will be taken into your full profile, and that will then recommend who you should engage with. And then later here in the year, we're also rolling out content, so you could do the same on content. That here's the content that we recommend to you. It's all about sort of bringing a personalized virtual experience there, or a personal conference experience where you get the items that are relevant for you. I had another question here. Let me see if I can find it. For smaller organizations that might not have large budgets, what are some of the ways that we can leverage sponsorship that actually can help to pay for the additional cost of technology? Sabine, do you want to make a stab there? Promotional banners, video commercials, what else have you seen there?
Yeah, but that's a very tricky question. I have to say, it's. I mean, of course, you can try to give them other opportunities to be present on the platform and sell this. But if you are in a hybrid format, you really have to be very creative to. What we are doing at the moment is really giving the benefits, like what is the equivalent of the benefit you can physically, and what is it in the digital world. And then you can, the added value would be if you buy it physically, you have it automatically digitally, because that's an added value. But you might be able to sell more of those items which you maybe have not sold before, because it's now an added value you're giving to them. But I think that's very individual depending on the type of sponsors you have. So I don't think there's a recipe where you can say you do it this way or that way. That would be really needs to be evaluated, and you have to see the whole picture, how to get in the additional. I don't think you can just put the burden on your sponsors to pay for more costs. But I saw another questions, and this is maybe also running to that, because it says, how will we as conference organizers be able to charge the same prices if the audience is virtual? And I think that's something I was kind of really not so amused about some of the conferences giving the virtual experience for free, because I think that the value is the content, what the conference what the association has. It's the learning and the content, and you should not give that for free. Okay, in 2020 everybody was kind of overwhelmed, and what was the right way to go? But I think you should always charge, and you should just consider if a virtual participant is not going to drink coffee, not going to have a lunch, or so maybe what we have calculated, kind of like it should be like 60% of the price, which is physical. So I feel that's kind of fair, between 50 and 60%, because they are not using the infrastructure, but they're using the content, and your content has value. And I think I really strongly recommend to actually stress that out, because it's not that they're not coming for the coffee, or even if you see service people only talking about the coffee break was not nice enough, but it's about the content you're delivering.
Yeah, and I think that us from the technology side of the event industry, we're also sort of looking at what are the things that we're not just saying, okay, let's take the virtual event that we did 2 years ago and plug that next to a physical event, and all of a sudden we have a great hybrid format that supports the future. So I think the hybrid that we saw will not be the hybrid that we will see in the future. And part of that is to be able to hit some of those value points, that content, of course, but also hitting the ability to engage and network. And I think this is where we can really start to see this change, and it will then have an impact on the cost if you do deliver value. And if you deliver value before the conference and after the conference, then it will be easier to in a good way shares ask for the audience to pay for that, and not just saying that virtual audience is for free. I also see sort of the virtual audience, the virtual exhibitors being a way to sort of vastly expand your footprint, where you maybe only can have 5, 6, 10 exhibitors if you're kind of a smaller conference. But you could very easily have 50 virtual exhibitors. So there's not the same restrictions when we talk on the virtual side of things. When so virtual sponsor, you probably have the ability to bring in more sponsors. So I think that's where we need to, that puzzle that I showed with all the different elements of sponsorships, of how do we do, and what kind of strategies should there be, not only for the physical sponsorship, but for the virtual sponsorship. So complex, it's a complex model. It's not as easy as it was when it was just physical or just virtual. We need to figure out what that picture looked like.
Yeah. And maybe I want to add on something, Joakim. It's also, if you engage the people in an engaging way and on the platform, if you make them active, as I showed on my pyramid, if they are active, then they will act active. If the participant has an active session, it's more likely that he will also visit your supporters, because it's not that, because you can see literally when you look at the pictures, if you just watch something, your brain goes down and you just like a robot, you just watch. But if you play a game, if you do play with your console, then you're active, and you're more likely to interact and to engage with all the offers you have on the platform. And that's vice versa. Also in the physical world, I mean, we have to be really honest. Also, the physical conferences have been damn boring. A lot of them. There was no excitement. There was no engagement. So I mean, we have good and bad examples, but the majority of conferences has never been really exciting. There have only been a very few where because a human tends to stay, oh, it was always like that, I keep it like that. And I was always trying to change that and to bring in other stuff. But I think that's the same in the digital world. Yeah. Let's change our mindset. If we don't change our mindset, we will never be successful.
I think that's a very good way to end the questions. Actually, so we want to have time to share a few words. So change our mindset. That's what we need to do to be able to embrace hybrid. Hybrid is the expectation of hybrid is a new new expectations on maybe an old format, but in a new way, and we need to change our mindset. So with that, I'm going to once again ask you to get your mobile phones out, see if you can open the camera and get the QR link here. This will send you a quick feedback survey, and we'd love to have your feedback on this session, and also thinking about what we want to do when we go forward. But with that, Sabine, do you want to anything that you want to leave the attendees with as a final thought?
Well, I think I have only one clear message. Do not expect the world after COVID will just go back as how it was. I know many industries have this vision, but let's take it as the biggest chance we ever got. We have to look. I mean, that's something maybe I'm repeating myself, but we have to look after our planet. I think that's something we have to think about sustainability. We need to choose very clearly where benefits from seeing each other live or alternatives for those who can benefit from the content we deliver. Never forget, it was and it is the purpose of the meeting. I mean, it was always, also in the physical world, it was the purpose. What is the purpose? Think about this. Only reflect that. Just sit down and write down the words. What is the purpose of my meeting? And if you have that down, you will make the right thing, because then it's regardless if it's digital, physical, or a hub, it doesn't matter. The purpose you want to transport, you have to keep in mind. And that's something we keep forgetting.
Thank you, Sabine. For me, I think that there's a few things that I just wanted to touch on. I think hybrid, it will open up for innovation. So make sure that you consider how you recruit new speakers, how we engage our attendees with technologies, and engage them over time, before, during, and after an event. That can really goes to see how you can deliver different value in your event. I think we have to look at this as one conference with one audience, combine them on one platform, get the results through one solution. And to do that's might not be easy to do, because the puzzle, back to the puzzle, there's a lot of different components here, this is always not always look the same. But the key to success is a partner that can help you putting the puzzle together the way that you want it to look like. Now, that puzzle then also so means that we want to have this open universe. We don't want to create walled cities or walled virtual events and walled physical events. We talk a lot about an open universe where we engage other technologies and bringing everything into one experience. The pandemic was the catalyst that sort of pushed everything into virtual. But now it's time for hybrid, and that is a format this inclusive format that builds on the strengths of the engagement and how to use in a smart ways using technology to innovate. So that's why we think that hybrid is forever, and we're here to guide you. Now, if you want to get someone from Six Connects on a call, we're very happy to jump on and talk to you about what we think about hybrid, what we think about how to apply our virtual platform into this. You can once again grab your mobile phone, and there's an easy way to request a call with us. So with that, I hope that we have inspired you to think a little bit different, to like Sabine said, use our mind a little bit, but help us to continue the conversation. Use the hashtag 6Chybrid on LinkedIn. Look out for instructions on how to join and continue the conversation. And as I said, this will be a series, so do come back for the next one. And with that, Sabine, thank you so much for joining, and thank you everyone that joined us here today, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.